Another test uses a chemical called sodium rhodisonate. Sodium rhodisonate is not sensitive to the nitrite, it's sensitive to the metals in gunshot residue. So gunshot residue may contain salts of metals such as lead, barium, and antimony. So this is sodium rhodisonate, and as you can see, as a solid, it has this dark green color. So what I'm going to do is to dissolve it in water. And it's an interesting material because it changes color when you dissolve it in water. So this is the color of an aqueous solution of rhodisonate where the metal present is sodium. So sodium rhodisonate. But the color will change if we add this to materials that contain other metal compounds, such as the metals that are found in GSR. This is barium. This is antimony. And this is lead. So if you can use sodium rhodisonate to detect these three elements, then you're probably dealing with GSR, because this is a pretty rare combination of elements. But as we know from our lecture on spectroscopy and atomic structure, nowadays we really shouldn't rely on these old-fashioned color tests. We have sophisticated instrumentation to do this analysis. And one of the best ways to analyze gunshot residue is to use SEM-EDX, which we talked about in that lecture. SEM, the scanning electron microscopy component, we can actually see the particles of GSR, which are in the micron range. And this is a GSR particle. The EDX component of the instrument can then tell us what elements are present in that particle. This can be very powerful forensic evidence. In 1999, the British TV personality Jill Dando was shot on her doorstep of her home in West London. After a long investigation, a man called Barry George was arrested, charged, and convicted. So in 2001, he was convicted of Jill Dando's murder. Part of the evidence for his conviction was finding one particle of GSR in his coat pocket. Now, if you fire a gun, or if a gun is fired at you, and there's GSR deposited on you or your clothes, it's not going to last long. Within a few hours, depending on exactly what is done, that GSR will be gone. So GSR must be searched for as soon as possible after the crime is committed. In the case of Barry George, they were able to find a particle of GSR on him because it was in his coat pocket, and presumably was trapped in the coat pocket and therefore was not washed off in any way. Barry George, however, appealed his conviction, and in 2007 his appeal was successful and he was released. he was considered innocent by the Court of Appeal because the GSR evidence was considered to be unreliable. What went wrong with the GSR evidence? The answer is GSR cannot be individualized. Just because you find a GSR particle which chemically matches any GSR found at the crime scene doesn't mean it's linked, because there's not much variation within GSR. Investigators involved in the Jill Dando case categorized GSR into 5 types. GSR containing lead, barium, and antimony, GSR containing lead, barium, antimony, and aluminium, GSR containing lead, barium, antimony, and tin, GSR containing lead, barium, calcium, tin, possibly antimony, and barium, calcium, silicon, tin, and maybe lead. So if you only have 5 different types of GSR, it means that the individualization is not very effective. So GSR is strong evidence, but on its own is not sufficient. So, arising from the internal ballistics, we have some important forensic methods. We can compare striations caused by rifling between different bullets. We can compare the mark caused by the impact of the firing pin onto the cartridge case. And we can also study the chemistry of GSR. And even though these methods have some limitations, it's still extremely important in firearms cases.